Hello, welcome to this course and welcome to this content clip. This is a clip that is made for the course DAB 130, and we will talk today about design thinking and systems thinking. In this course, you might already seen that in the study guide and on Canvas, we will adhere to a structure of hear, create and deliver. And this is basically a simplified version of a design process where hear is about understanding a certain situation or a certain problem. Create is about finding a solution that fits within that context. And deliver is working towards a prototype and a value proposition. And in this course we will do that as well. We will walk through these three stages and we will work towards a concept and a value proposition. The structure from hear, create and deliver is based on work from IDEO. IDEO is one of the biggest design agencies in the world actually, and about 10 years ago they came up with this structure, and this is a bit of a technical view of that structure, where hear has activities that are more related to, for example, observations or storytelling or reading articles on how a certain situation is. Then create is a phase which is a little bit more abstract, which is less related to doing direct tools of applying techniques and more finding what is relevant in the information that you've found in the hear phase, like themes or maybe opportunities. Then based on this phase, based on these kind of creative activities that you will take, solutions will form and solutions will be found by you and your team. And those solutions are then which you kind of select out of this create phase and take into the deliver phase, where you will finally construct a proposal. It can be a prototype, an implementation plan, or a value exchange will be the focus of this course. So this is a little bit more of an in-depth view of how these hear, create and deliver phases are constructed, and that there's activities that are both very concrete but also a little bit more abstract. This is another example of a design process. This is a little bit more of a way how designers explain it as well in their theories and in their examples. We will walk through this phase and you will see the similarities between the hear, create, deliver structure. Here the design process starts with the empathize phase and the define phase. You can see that as the hear part that you just heard before. Then the designer will move into an ideate and prototype phase, which can be the create part. And then the deliver is about testing the prototype, implementing it in a certain situation, understanding how it will fit in the context. And you see that this very similar process to the one that we will use is constructed in a circle. And that is done because this work is generally iterative. And with iterative we mean that you have to go through these cycles a couple of times to really grasp your context. We will not have time to do that in this course, but that's the conceptualization of these kind of design processes, is that they are not just linear to go towards your solution, but they're very much about exploring, very much about refining what you found in, for example, testing with a new empathize and define phase. This gives a little bit more detail and context on what a design process is like. And this way of working is often referred to as design thinking. Martin described a way to look at problems that we currently face, and he describes them as well-defined problems. You can see that on the slide. But he mentions in his work that actually the societal challenges that we face at the moment are very much ill-defined problems. They're networked problems. They're very big problems, like for example dealing with sustainability or poverty or education, and we cannot see these problems as being well defined. They're rather ill defined, and they are networked, and they cannot be addressed with a single solution. And we refer to these problems as wicked problems. And in his work, Martin describes that to actually address these wicked problems, we should not address them in a linear fashion, because usually we have to find a new angle or a new perspective to add something to this problem. So that's why design thinking is often described as an appropriate way to deal with these more large societal challenges that we will also work on in this course, but then related to healthcare and more specifically dementia. So here you can see that the design thinking process actually allows us to define a concrete solution that addresses a problem, a how part of a problem. Where research often builds itself on understanding the what or the why of a certain problem, designers come with concrete solutions. So the ideate and prototype is a very important part of this process. And with this we can actually materialize solutions and propose them and share them with others. So this helps in addressing the how of these bigger societal problems. So a little bit more into depth about design thinking. So we already understand now that design skills are proposed as a way to solve these more complex organizational and societal challenges. So how does that then work? Corksey describes the designer role as being one that goes about understanding current needs, drafting concepts, so ideate and prototype, and by iteratively building and testing solutions. So by trying different things, understanding how these different things work in practice, and then going back to the drawing table to make a better version. Martin, we already heard about them talking about wicked problems, describes the designers are able to include stakeholders in this iterative process, take their perspectives, and also balance these sometimes contradicting perspectives in a coherent design solution. And that's what we're going to do in this course as well. Brown, he is the chief of IDEO. He has, as one of the first authors that has described design thinking a little bit more than 10 years ago, and he also describes this hear, create and deliver phases in his book. And what he describes as vital skills for the hear phase is that designers take an anthropological mindset. So that's someone who tries to understand human behavior and human actions. And he does that by gaining insights, observing the situation, building an understanding, and having empathy for the different stakeholders. And of course, the way to do this can be very different. And that's something for you to find out in this course. In the create phase that will follow, it's about experimenting, iterating, proposing and building prototypes if possible. And then the deliver phase is about detailing that solution, aligning the values in the stakeholder network. So how does that then work, for example, in this course? So the first part, the here part, is about really understanding the context. Here you see one of our research projects where we are working together with older adults to build an understanding of their current perspective with regard to learning a new smart mobile device for them new. And here the designer, researcher of this project had to take really that anthropological mindset to really understand why are people interested in learning such a smart mobile device. And what we, for example, found here, that it's not so much their own health and safety, but it's very much the social features that are interesting for older adults to start learning it and to build the motivation to learning it. While actually in practice, they are often applied from a safety and healthcare perspective. So this brought us a new insight that we could leverage in introducing this smartphone to this group. What we will do in this course is we will invite stakeholders that you can interview. And those stakeholders are a way for you to build an understanding of their perspective. And these are some things to take into account when you are conducting an interview. You have to prepare it well. You have to know both what you are interested in finding out and how you're going to find that out. You need to accommodate the interviewee to provide their perspective and their role. So don't try to put your own perspective, to project your own perspective on them, but to really take a curious mindset where you really want to understand how they function and what actions they take in their current role. And by this you can build an understanding of their situation and context. Don't be afraid to ask follow-up questions if you think that's appropriate. So be flexible during your interview and be willing to step aside from your protocol if that is actually something that is needed at that moment. And also don't forget to ask open questions, which will trigger a response. So don't ask yes/no question like, did you like the weather today? But ask something about how did you experience the weather, for example. So the goal of this exercise is understanding and to inspire solutions in the create phase. Of course, we are dealing with the COVID-19 situation, so that means that we will have arranged and invited some experts that you can interview via Teams during one of the sessions on Thursday afternoon. One of the things that we leverage, for example, from the case that I just showed, is that we found out that older adults liked social contact, but they also very much liked to walk around in their neighborhood. So instead of providing them with an application so that they could measure how healthy and active they were, we created an application that allowed them to register their leisure time walks. So the walks that they made with their dog or in the nature that surrounded the village. And this actually motivated the participants much more than just measuring the steps that they would take. Then the second phase, which is much more related to the create phase, is about iterating, experimenting, and creating prototypes. And of course, making prototypes can be done in different ways and on different levels. You must have experienced that already in your education. And here on the picture you, for example, see a very low fidelity prototype. This is an example from Adobe, how they prototyped a mobile application. So the first versions of your prototype don't necessarily need to be a full representation of the finished product, but it needs to offer an idea of your experience that you want to deliver, so that the participants can get an idea of what you are aiming at, what you're thinking about with your concept. And by doing this and putting this kind of prototypes in the hands of people, you can actually very quickly build an understanding if your concept works. Of course, when you're going to present your concept to us or to experts, it needs to be of a higher quality level. Otherwise, people will judge this by its current form. But as a part of the process, it makes a lot of sense to have low fidelity prototypes. Well, here's one of our examples. We worked on a musical pillow for people living with dementia. By pressing the pillow, you could play sounds that were relevant for that person and that evoked a very positive response from the person. And to give you a little bit of the insight of how that prototyping process worked on the background, you can see some pictures here. So of course we started with concepting and sketching out the idea, but very quickly we went to the field with a prototype that we made. On a picture in the middle left, you see, for example, how we put a Bluetooth speaker in a pillow and then just brought it to the care environment. And by that we could very simply, with technology that is available to us, explore if letting music come out of a pillow actually made sense. And then moving forward, we actually made an interactive pillow, which you can see on the right side and the bottom of this slide. So this shows how you can with very simple means build prototypes to see if your idea actually makes sense before you move on. And then the third part that Brown describes is that you should collaborate with your stakeholders and you should have an open attitude towards insights. So don't fall in love with your first ideas, be open, discuss your ideas with other people and really understand their perspective or why they have a certain opinion about your proposal. So now we know a little bit more about design thinking and its process. I want to also show you the systems thinking perspective. It's a little bit more recent that systems thinking is emerged as a kind of new way of looking at things. And I want you to take this perspective into this course as well. System thinking is a little bit less focused on the user and is more focused on the entire system where you position your solution. And with system, we mean all the actors, all the stakeholders, all the people that are directly or indirectly playing a role when you introduce a new design. So, for example, with the musical pillar that you just saw, you can imagine that the care professional, the family, the person with dementia, the producer of the technology, all play a role in that care system. So looking at this as an example from Disrupt Design, where you see that we try to move from a kind of linear way of working to a non-linear way of working. We try to look at not just single parts of such a stakeholder environment, look at the whole, look also at the processes that take place there, the networks instead of just the separate actors, and not just looking at the objects, but look also at the relationships between these objects and the actors. So by putting these next to each other, we can see that design thinking is user-focused, solution-focused, and actually aims to address this need with a current solution. Well, putting the system thinking perspective next to that, we see that system thinking is system focus, so about the dynamics and the understanding of the entire system. Problem focused, so often system maps are created to build an understanding of the entire situation around the problem, and they aspire sustainability. So it's not just about solving the solution, but also solving it in such a way that it works for all the stakeholders, and that the value exchanges that we will come back to later are actually balanced in this system. There's also similarities between design thinking and systems thinking. So they both are focused on first understanding the situation before you can come up with a solution. I think that makes a lot of sense by now. Also, they both focus on building empathy for people and actually interact with all these stakeholders to build this picture. And they work both iteratively as well towards a solution that works. And both are innovative and look for novel perspectives of new ways of working, addressing undetected needs or undetected patterns. So later in the course we will also look at tools for value exchange in the deliver phase, but this is a picture that shows, for example, how a stakeholder map that represents the system around a certain solution might look like. And here you can see that this is a solution created for families with young kids about healthy eating, that actually the family itself is only a small part of the entire solution. You see that, for example, local supermarkets play a role in this idea, and that the new service provider takes an idea, and the farmers play a role here. And even, I'm not gonna zoom in on the entire picture, but what I want to show here is that your solutions that you come up with actually take place in an entire system of actors. And that's what we will have a look at in this course as well. Then to close this content clip, during this course we want you to be aware of both the design thinking and the systems thinking perspective, and to also use both of them to come up with a solution for the complex challenge that you will face. As you will move through the hear, create and deliver phases in this course, you will work towards a solution, and you have to make sure that this user need is addressed. That's what the design thinking process is for, but also that it works on this systems level. And we will cover tools that will help you to do both in this course, so to help you operate on both of these levels. But of course there's much more tools and resources available, so we will hand you a few in this course, but you can also of course go and find tools that you think are fitting for your project yourself. And we also highly encourage that during this course. So thank you for this, thank you for looking at this content clip, and I hope it made the design thinking and system thinking perspective a little bit more clear to you.